Hi, everyone. Marcel here with Anvil Wealth and Anvil Sport. I'm honored today to be with Kevin Pratte. I'm happy to have you, Kevin. Welcome to the Anvil Podcast. How are you?
Well, Marcel, thanks a ton for having me. Yeah, I just had a great day at work. Life is good, and I'm extremely excited we connected. I've gotten to be kind of friends with Coach Neil, who's over at Concordia Irvine. He is also a Long Beach State alum, stud volleyball player, and he connected us, and I'm very grateful. And you and I this weekend got on the phone, and it was wonderful. We were just sharing so many stories about volleyball and stories about recruiting, and really thrilled to be on your podcast. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. So a couple of things. I know from Neil a couple of the things you're doing, but tell us and the viewers a little bit about your background. I know you're a volleyball guy. I was a coach back from 96 to 01, but I think your timing came in a little after. You're a little younger than me. So how did you get started in volleyball?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll never forget, I was on a beach in Carlsbad, and I was like in third grade, and I saw my childhood friend's parents playing beach volleyball. And I was a little timid to say, hey, I want to give that a go. I was always an athletic kid. And then I remember Brenda Beach came up to me like it was yesterday. I was family friends with her, and she was, a mother of one of my childhood friends. She's like, Kevin, you should never be terrified to come in. We'll always let you come and play. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of got hooked on the sport after that. And I would play in these little middle school leagues, grass thing, but it was in the Inland Empire. And if anyone's unfamiliar with that area, it's about 150 miles inland of the West Coast. So in California. But I got hooked. I played in middle school, ended up playing club in high school, and got connected with Phil Sutherland. He was my director in Corona, and he really helped mentor me in trying to find me a home and my recruiting journey. And it's fun to dive into that, Marcel. That's kind of a long-winded story, but basically at the end of the day, like any other athlete right now in high school, I wanted to play big-time volleyball. I wanted to be in the NPSF. I wanted to play for Long Beach, or I wanted to play for UCLA or UC Santa Barbara, Pacific, or Northridge. So I went to a bunch of camps. I met coaches like yourself who were really good to me. And one thing I admired about them, they always gave me a shot, Marcel. They didn't say, well, hey, you're off the beaten path a little bit. Because back then, kids weren't playing Division I volleyball from Hemet or the Inland. They are a little bit more now. Yeah. This was back in 2005. But yeah, I got my shot at Pacific. And absolutely loved it and played there, and then ended up getting really heavily involved in coaching after my playing career and taking a lot of paths. I've been at, Nebraska working with Coach Cook as a GA. Yeah. I was a community college coach. And now I live in sunny San Diego as a physical education teacher. I'm a high school coach. I'm doing some recruiting coordinating and helping some kids, and life is good. But at the end of the day, it's really about relationships, and those relationships I had with those coaches when I was 18 years old. I still know Coach Knipe. I still know Coach Kimball from Northridge, or Coach Fisher, who I played for, or Coach Wortman. So I know that's very long-winded, but the journey's always been fun, and I've met great people along the way, and I feel I'm still marching, and doing some fun in the sport.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great story. I love hearing people's path and how things go. Some of it's luck, a lot of it's hard work, some of it's timing, and when you put all of it together, good things happen. Anyway, so we'll segue into a couple of things. You impressed me with a couple of things. Obviously, number one, you have a podcast, which I know how much work that goes into it. I'm still kind of new at it, but I enjoy doing it. But it is a lot of work, technical stuff, timing, schedule, and just effort. But it is fun. I think you probably, just from your enthusiasm, I would think you like doing it. So tell us a little bit about your podcast for people that are on my platform. They may want to see your podcast. What do you go over on your podcast?
Well, I appreciate the plug. And one thing that I was so fortunate, because of college volleyball, I went to the University of Pacific, and that's in Stockton, California. And a lot of people come up to me now that I'm living in San Diego, like, oh man, you went to school in Stockton. What was that like? I'm like, no, it was the best thing. Because I identified, Marcel, at a very young age. I'm like, look, this city needs help. This city's in bankruptcy. This city, It's not a booming city. And so I actually had the ability to figure out like, hey, I'm going to get involved with the United Way president, or I'm going to go volunteer here in this.
Right.
And it kind of gave me that confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me this opportunity to like, be comfortable being uncomfortable. I mean, I was like 21 years old and I'd be on these like grant committees at United Way. And like, I didn't maybe have business being there. And if I was in a big city like San Diego or New York or Chicago, I probably couldn't get on those. But in Stockton, they were starving for it.
Yeah.
And I get that answer because, believe it or not, I know I'm very chatty and people know that I like to talk and all that. And that's great. But there was definitely some vulnerability when I decided to start this podcast, because we're in the Wild West when it comes to podcasts, and boys volleyball is still in the incubator in the sense with the sport's, to me, still growing fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want to say it's a young sport, but there's, the men's side and boys side, there's still things there hasn't been a lot of recruiting coordinators. There hasn't been a lot of podcasts.
Right.
Me, I thought about, hey, when I was these kids' age, I loved it when people came in and hyped up the Inland Empire for volleyball, or hyped up Wisconsin, or hyped up Virginia. And I said, I don't really think anyone in the country is doing that. I do think like Volleyball Magazine and AVCA is doing a good job nationally.
Mm-hmm.
Part of my podcast is I talk to college coaches. I pick their brain, kind of like how you're picking mine. I learn a lot. I think it's educational for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I also go into regions like Wisconsin, or I go to Virginia and I get the top 5 players from those volleyball places that are the studs. And I just interview them, say, tell me how your sport's going to become sanctioned in high school volleyball.
Right.
What's the coaching like there? What are the top clubs? And what's really been fun, Marcel, and you know that you are too, I'm a relationship-driven guy.
Oh, yeah.
When I go to these tournaments now, all of a sudden I was like, KP, you know people from Virginia, you know people from Wisconsin, you know people from New York. I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I'm in a real good phase of life right now. I'm happy. I love teaching, Marcel. It's fulfilling. But it gives me an opportunity to do these hobbies we're talking about, helping kids with recruiting, high school coach. And you and I briefly talked about on the phone, if I was over at UC San Diego right now helping Brad and on that staff, who's amazing at UC San Diego, I just don't think I could have the time to do a podcast and write for Volleyball Magazine. I'd have to be on the recruiting trail working hard. And I've really carved my own niche, if you may, and I'm really enjoying it. Like, I'm loving teaching, loving the podcast, loving Volleyball Magazine. I'm happy, so it's good.
That's pretty awesome. You said one thing that is a big deal with me. What I try and do with Anvil Wealth and Anvil Sport is really get people to get out of their comfort zone. And right when you said that, I go, this is why we're connecting, because one of the things I try and work with the student athletes is get them a little bit out of their comfort zone, because you're already doing that as a volleyball player. You have to learn techniques that you don't know. The coach has to show you new things. And it's scary. You don't want to screw up. You don't want to hit the ball in the net and everyone laughs at you. Like, it's the same thing with everything in life. So if you can do it in sport, you can do it in everything in your life. So when you said that, I'm like, that's why we initially connected, I'm sure, because we don't just, take the easy job, sit at home, drink a beer. Like, we're constantly working, and I'm so happy you said that, because that's kind of my philosophy, is get out of your comfort zone.
For sure. And I think sports gives you that platform and opportunity, like you just alluded to. I think a misconception for maybe young volleyball players is they maybe look at a successful player that's doing well, like a libero like Dustin Watton, or you look like our Olympians like Eric Soji, or you look at like someone like John Spraw or Alan Knight, all these really big successful people in our game. Right. And I think sometimes when you're 15, you might look at it like, well, that person just hasn't made. They just like, no, the person put their tail off. They have vulnerabilities too. We have vulnerabilities. I have vulnerabilities, in the sense where it's like, hey, is this going to land? Right. But I think at the end of the day, we talked about this too. Just be genuine, be yourself, be passionate about what you're doing. Yeah. And good things happen. I'm glad I took that leap of faith. And believe it or not, Marcel, I'm not going to lie. The podcast still, I believe is like in second gear. It needs to get third and fourth, and there's some things I can do, but I can tell you this, I'm enjoying the process. And I know that's cliche. And I'm enjoying the process, and I'm enjoying the journey, and it's fun, and hopefully I'm impacting some people with it and getting them knowledgeable about recruiting and volleyball and firing them up.
Awesome.
And helping kids, so I think it's all a win no matter what,
That's great. So for everyone out there, it's KP Here is the podcast. It's on Spotify, right?
It's on Spotify. Okay. I do the audio version on Spotify, having a great time with it. And, if I may, people are always like, why KP Here? That's not really like a volleyball. But Jason Borchin, who's been on the podcast, he's the Cal Poly assistant coach on the women's side. He was my teammate. And when we would be at social events in college, like, 20, 21, 22, we would just come into these events and I'd be like, KP here. And he would be like, JB here. And that's always kind of stuck. And like,
stay with it. It's unique. It's unique and people remember it. So I think that's awesome. And it's you. And it's you. It's authentic, Yeah,
it's an enthusiastic way to say hello, if you may.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. So now the next thing, I was very impressed. I didn't know that you were actually a writer for Volleyball Magazine. So congratulations on that. And that's quite an honor. Tell me a little bit about how that happened and how much, what you do with that.
Well, I really appreciate that. And to talk about vulnerability, I'll put it right at you, and I'll put my money where my mouth is. In seventh grade, Marcel, academics didn't come easy for me. I was a little scrawny, underweight. I was probably 5'5", and writing wasn't natural to me. I could talk, and math wasn't doing it. And my parents sat me down and like, I think with your maturity and where you're at, we're gonna opt to hold you back, which was very interesting. Getting held back in middle school and going to middle school for 4 years.
Oh, geez.
I was a 4-time starter for the basketball team, Marcel. And but anyways, I always had this chip on my shoulder because when you're at that age, which some of our volleyball children are, there that 8th, 9th grade. I hate to say this word in education, but sometimes I felt like, oh man, am I dumb or something? Like, why is this not working? And I was young and adolescent. I had the best parents. I had I won the parent lottery. They were great. But I got this mojo with my grades, and I started doing really well. And the reason they did it is my sister, who's very intelligent and is older, was like applying to Stanford and Santa Clara, Boston College. She was getting in, but they were realizing how hard it is to get into those schools. And they're like, what are we going to do with Kevin? And they saw a path for me. So my point is, I always had a chip on my shoulder after that about my education. And I really wanted, and I don't think this is bad. It was like a log in the fire, and I didn't have to prove anyone wrong. No one was like doubting me or bullying me, nothing like that.
Right.
I wanted to kind of be like, hey, I could do this. I could do this. And so that's one of the reasons I pursued a master's. I have 2 masters now. I have one in education administration, one in PE, and I take a lot of pride in that as an educator. And then
congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then, but also it really was near and dear to my heart when I got the call from Wade Gerard, who runs First Point. He's like, hey, we like what you're doing. Kara Hill was having me write for her. And she really gave me an opportunity with her recruiting business to write. And I'm very appreciative of that. And I got a call from Wade and Lee, who are at Volleyball Magazine. And I was taken back a little bit. I was like, hey, and I was first to tell him, like, hey, I'm not really a writer,
Right.
I know how to write, but I give a lot of credit to Lee. He's been very patient and working with me. And I'm very also proud because my dad was a journalist, and my dad growing up is a writer. And like my first volleyball check from Volleyball Magazine, I have it framed and it's in my office. And then
that's awesome.
I know my dad's really proud. And to me, like, it's kind of full circle, right? Like I struggled with writing, right? And during my journey and my education path, all of a sudden now I'm a writer. And I understand, Volleyball Magazine, is awesome. But to me, I think it's one of the best published magazines for volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I take it very seriously, and it's really cool. I get to highlight student athletes on the boys high school and club level. And
that's awesome.
So it's cool. So I hope they keep me as long as they want, because I love it. So,
I'll give you a little fun fact that not too many people know about, but my little brother Claude was a Fab 50 back in, I think it was 93 or 94.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah. Total random. All right, cool. Let's move on now to there's two things I really want to talk about, and I know you're super passionate about that. Let's go with the first one is your nonprofit, which is the Scholarship Foundation. Like, this is an amazing thing. I'm very impressed, with everything you're doing, but this is really impressive. So open up and tell us a little bit about the foundation and how these scholarships come about, and what got you doing all this.
Yeah, I think like anything we've talked about, I know you're a successful business guy and you're a business coach. And I think in volleyball, this happens. When you're lifting weights, this happens. And when the ball starts rolling in the game of life and you get involved and you give yourself opportunities, other opportunities come about. And if you just go ahead, be genuine, network how you are capable of networking.
Right.
And so for me, it was just really important. It was a me thing again. I did not get this vibe from anyone else, but I was like, it's really important to me when I walk in these convention centers, when I shake Jeff Nygaard's hand of SC, when I go say hi to the Long Beach staff and UCLA. I'm an educator, and that's how I was raised. Is I want to be a respectful guy, and I don't want to walk in where everyone's like, Kevin's just trying to make money for his recruiting business. That was very important to me. And no one's ever given me those vibes.
Right.
But so then I started saying, like, hey, what are you, Kevin? You're a teacher, you're an educator. I'm in the downtown Breakfast Rotary. And, a lot of my mentors in the Rotary Club, like, they give back a lot. And I love helping them. And there's some projects I do with them. But I like to sometimes be on the front end of it and say, hey, I can really get involved. And they've been great at the Rotary. But I'm like, volleyball is a passion of mine. I've been doing it for a while.
Right.
I started looking into it, and I was like, there's not really a scholarship for boys volleyball. And I was like, I could just start like a business with it. But I was like, if I do a nonprofit, to me, it's just a little easier to ask people to donate and get involved. 501c3.
Yeah.
It's completely different than my recruiting KP recruiter business. It's completely different ends. And I started it. My family's involved in it, which is awesome. And they live in San Diego, my parents, and they've been incredibly supportive. I will say, Marcel, I didn't realize how much work it was going to take, but it's okay. Like you.
Yeah.
Basically, I've had to start a business.
Yeah.
And through that foundation, basically, every August, we're going to get kids to apply to the scholarship. There's a slew of people I respect, coaches and mentors of mine. We read these essays, we look at their transcript, and we're not looking necessarily that you have to have a 4.0 and be an all-American volleyball player.
Right.
We try to look at, hey, is this child really making some great strides in life? Are they doing this? And we did a great job this last year. In our first year, we had a young man from Texas who just got recruited to Fort Valley. His name is Dozy, and he was great. And he had a great essay. He told a great story.
Nice.
And we had Ben Hutchinson from Indiana, and he's going to Ohio State. And it's just so fun to start something, because like this next year we're going to do it again. And I kind of want to treat these guys like Heisman Trophy winners. And like they're on now the panel that's going to help decide the next scholarship winners.
Oh, that's awesome.
So hopefully over the years and through that foundation, we've got a lot of good stuff going on. We're getting an auction going in a few weeks, and I can't believe the generosity of the people of San Diego that I know.
That's awesome.
We have like 10 club tickets. We got Padre tickets, and we're going to, and it's a tax write-off for those people. We're going to raise some money, help the foundation, help with some scholarships. And then, we have that camp through our foundation where Stanford, MIT, Pepperdine, USC, and Hobart, they're going to come in July 13th and 14th and help me run a camp. It's called TP Volleyball Camp.
Nice.
And it's going to be at the Bishop's School in La Jolla. And it's just, there's a lot of fun little things going on. And where does it all have in common? Volleyball, relationship building. All these people like that I've known. And I'm telling you, Marcel, it is really, I'm having a blast. Like, yeah, it's work, and I got to get these camps going, but it's really fulfilling, so I'm glad like my foundation, by the way.
Yeah, congratulations on that. I'm sure we're going to be doing some things, and hopefully I can help you with that down the road too, because that's really an honorable thing to do, and it obviously comes from inside of you. No one told you to do it, so you should be proud of that. That's a really great accomplishment,
Well, I really appreciate that, and I'm going to be honest with you, Marcel. We're at the tip of the iceberg with it. Like, I did the scholarship last year, but I didn't have the 501c3. I got the 501c3, and I got that approved like in November.
Okay.
So it's still in the incubator, and I'm a lot, but you know what? I have the utmost amount of respect for my parents. Like, we're doing this the right way. We're crawling before we can walk.
Yeah.
Walk before we can run.
Yeah.
We've talked to like CEOs who run like nonprofits, and it's really important to us that we want to stay true to ourselves and do it the right way, but we also want to help these kids,
Yeah.
And I'm very, very lucky the people I've surrounded myself with. And then there's a lot of people rooting us on, but like anything, I'm sure we're going to go through our days that like, wow, this went really well for the foundation. We didn't anticipate that this was going to happen. Okay, we got to fix this. But again, how fun is it to use volleyball as a vehicle to literally teach life skills and make an impact on kids? Like, it's pretty awesome,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm real happy. As you can see, I'm super passionate about it. But all these things we've talked about, I'm really into.
That's so awesome. And then the last thing, I mean, you're doing so many things. I gotta have my notes here to keep track of all this fun stuff. But the last one is really your big connection with volleyball is your recruiting coordinator. So the people that follow your podcast already know this. For people that don't, that may be joining my podcast and want to and see what you're doing, tell us, what is a recruiting coordinator? You help people go to college? Like, what do you do for them? How do you help them?
Well, Marcel, I'm really glad you mentioned this. I think if you would have asked like Alan Knipe, John Spraw, you would have even asked me 7 years ago. If you were like, Kevin, do you need a recruiting coordinator for men's volleyball? And I'd be like, no, and this is why. I'd be like, there's only 22 Division I men's programs. At the end of the day, if you really want to play at Long Beach, Ohio State, Penn State, you can email them every day, and they'll eventually say yes or no. Right. It is a taxing thing. With only 22, they might not get back to you right away. They might take their time. And I'm talking if you're not a blue chip recruit. And what does that mean? You're a guy that's just barely making the team, a recruit walk on at best.
Right.
And, I am grateful for like my experience of playing at University Pacific, my experience of being community college coach, my experience with Coach Cook. These college coaches have been very helpful, but I ended up coaching at Wave, which is in San Diego, very respected club down here. And Brendan, the owner, and Jed, the director, I gave him this idea. I'm like, hey, we should have like a recruiting coordinator. A lot of kids want to. And it was essentially what I'm doing now, Marcel, but I was doing it within the club. And at the time, I wasn't a PE teacher, and I put a lot of focus on that. I was coaching a little bit, community college coaching. And then when I got this teaching job and I was working at Bishop's, I was like, man, this is a lot. So I stepped away from Wave.
Right.
Always been grateful, and Wave's still super good to me. And but I had this knowledge, and I saw it starting to boom on the women's side. I was like, wow, there's like recruiting coordinators that and to me, I saw the game growing on the men's side. And then I was like, I am pretty connected with these coaches. I know them on first name basis. I have their phone numbers. And Kara Hill called me one time, and she's on the girls' side and does it. She's like, you should totally do this. And I was like, and again, it goes to that vulnerability. Like now, like, how did you not do it, Kevin? Like, well, but I was like, it's hard to do something that no one else is doing.
Yeah.
Like, look at it like, yeah, there's NCSA. There are recruiting coordinators for club. I don't know if there's anyone like doing it like, I'm a recruiting coordinator. Here's my podcast.
Right.
Learn all about me. And so, but it got going and it was received well. And I, again, have tried to stay genuine and stay true to who I am.
Right.
And basically, in a nutshell, I help student athletes that want to play. And to me, I would hope if you asked like John Hawks at Loyola or Long Beach, Coach Alan Knipe, all these guys, they probably couldn't legally because NCAA rules be like, you should hire this guy. But I think they would have a different view. They're like, yeah, the game is growing. There's way more Division I teams. Division III is thriving. There's more options for volleyball. The game is growing at a rapid rate. And I'm not gonna lie, Marcel, I don't have every kid in the book that's my kid.
Right.
Very niche. Like it's the families that they really want to see their kid play.
Right.
It's a wide net that they're willing to be like, hey, he's willing to go play in the MIVA and play for like Olympia, McKendree. He's willing to go to Long Beach. He's willing to go play at Penn State or St. Francis up in Pennsylvania. And it's, you know, it's not that I haven't worked with blue chip guys. Sometimes I get a hold of them when they're like sophomores and then pretty simple because they're so good. But a lot of my guys, the process takes maybe till the end of their junior year. But the clients I work with, Marcel, I got to give it to them. Like they're tenacious. They're willing to email, connect with coaches, go on official visits. Right. And to be honest, the person who gets a lot of credit for this is my father. Before all this recruiting, when he kind of gave me back because he was my recruiting coach. Right. Hey, you should email these coaches what you should do. And I loved that journey. But again, you have to be very vulnerable during recruiting. You got to go to basically be like, I'm good enough to play for your program. Right. And that's a hard thing, but it's what a great life skill. You got to do that later in your life. Hey, can I work for a company? Or when you go to try to meet your future partner, you know, and all that stuff. So all these things, I really believe volleyball was just a vehicle of teaching me all these life skills that I'm applying to now. And, you know, so I'm very happy with the recruiting coordinating. It's gone really well. Been able to send kids to all places across the country. And I don't plan on slowing down anytime soon. It's super fun.
Wow. That's pretty awesome. Well, you've covered pretty much everything. I don't think you're going to take another side job because I think you got enough. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, one thing is I'm really lucky that I have a great supporting cast. My parents are very supportive. I have a wonderful sister. My girlfriend, Sheena, is very supportive. And they don't curb my enthusiasm.
That's awesome.
But I'm constantly always working on an article or talking to a recruit on the phone or connecting with the coach. Again, I enjoy it because it's the relationship business. But I'm really lucky that my loved ones, at the end of the day, Marcel, that's A1 to me. Like all this is important, but my family, you know, but my family's like cheering me on, you know. So, but it's important too for me to sometimes take a deep breath. Like school's going to end in a week or tomorrow, excuse me, for my teaching. So I got to make sure that I spend some quality time with my family and hang out with Sheena and all that. And we do, and I'm very lucky. But yes, I have a lot on my plate, but it's like super fun. So
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. It's been a great interview. I love getting to know you and all your projects, and really happy and looking forward to working with you in the future on all this fun stuff, you know?
Yeah, Marcel, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg for you and I, and I'm really glad we got to meet. And to me, I appreciate when fellow podcasters, I try to do this too, where you have us on, because I think everyone has an interesting path, you know, and everyone has an interesting story. And I just really appreciate that you gave me this opportunity to kind of say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Because, you know, like when I'm hosting my podcast, like, I plug a little bit here and there. But to me, when I'm interviewing people, it's about them, you know. So I appreciate this opportunity. And thanks for letting me on. And hope all you listeners, if you want to get involved in the foundation or, you have a recruit that's passionate about playing volleyball, get in touch with me.
Awesome. All right. It's the KP Here podcast on Spotify. And this is Kevin Pratte. Marcel Doumerc with Anvil Wealth signing off. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Awesome.